We are going to start in a seat, taking your hips elevated on a block or bolster, and I'm going to take you through a yin practice, which is going to dance between this practice of contraction and closing in and introspection, and then opening out into a state of expansion and extension. So we're going to keep moving from a closed off position to an open position and just keep moving that way the whole way down the length of the body. So we're going to start in a seat, and I'm going to bring you into a breathing practice called Samavriti, which is simply an equal breath in and out. And I offer this quite often in our yoga practices because it's really neutralizing and very balancing. So find a seat that's comfortable for you and close down the eyes. And give yourself a nice big breath. Let all the breath go. And then just start to watch the breath, just seeing how it's organically coming and going without any need to change it. And then we're going to start to create a little bit of control around the breath. So just follow the breath in and just count that breath on a natural inhale. And then follow the breath out and try and match the count on the out breath. So if the natural inhale is a count of 3 or 4, maybe it's quite big and full and you're up to 6 or 7 or 8. And as you breathe out, you're going to breathe out for the same amount of time. But I want you to try and allow the breath to be as natural as possible. So trying not to control and expand and deepen the breath too much unless you're feeling like you really need it. It'd be nice for you to just be able to sit back and to observe and watch the breath as it's easily coming and going without any great change to it, unless of course you need to. What naturally happens when we really start to focus on the breath is the breath does, even when we try not to, the breath does organically start to slow down and deepen. And if you're finding the in-breath or the out-breath is wanting to naturally be a little bit longer, just really working within the confines of a time frame that feels really easy, where there's no stress or force to create the breath to be longer or shorter, until you land in a space where you're feeling like the breath is rhythmically locking into that inhale, exhale in an equal rhythm. And the power and benefit of working with this kind of breath is that it just brings the energy body and the nervous system into a more centered and balanced state. So if you're naturally breathing in more, it's triggering potentially a state of stress. And so by accessing and equalizing the out breath, we start to bring the nervous system back down and back to a more calm state. Or if you're naturally breathing out a lot more and you're feeling quite sluggish and quite demotivated and low in energy, then building up the in-breath to be the same length as the out-breath will help to increase a little bit of vitality and come back to a more stable and calm state as well. And we're going to carry that breath the whole way through the practice. So just staying here for 3 more breaths. And then we're going to come and lay flat on our back. And as you come onto your back, just laying either flat with your legs outstretched, if you want to take your feet flat on the floor and keep the knees and hips bent, then you're welcome to do that. Just bring your hands onto your belly and just give yourself 3 breaths laying on your back, breathing deeply down into the belly. And then from here, we're going to move into kind of a variation of fish pose, where we open up really through the thoracic chest, kind of between, and really providing pressure under the back line of the body to open up, particularly around the sternum, and we'll also get some opening through the throat. I prefer to do this with a block. So if you have a block, your block's going to go lengthways in the middle of the back, with the top of the block aligning the top of the shoulder blades. If you don't have a block, then you can take a bolster, but I would take it horizontally, so that as you lay over the bolster, the pressure of the bolster is through the upper back and not down lower. I'm going to stick with my block. And as you come down onto your back, if you feel like the opening through the throat is too much, first of all, just lengthen out the back of the head and neck so the chin pulls down towards the chest a little bit more. If that's still too big, you can take a block or bolster or pillow underneath the head just to provide a little bit of elevation, but you'll still get this opening across the front of the chest. So we're really targeting the muscles of the pecs that stretch out from your sternum and in through the front of the shoulder. Take your arms out wide and your palms facing up. It can also be nice, I quite like in this particular pose, at times to just sweep the arms up overhead, but trying to keep the palms facing up. If you're using the block, you'll get a lot more pressure of the firmness of the block into the muscles around the shoulders. It can feel nice. It can also be quite uncomfortable. And then whenever you find a space that's feeling good for you, whether you stay in a little bit of gentle movement of the arms, sweeping up and down, maybe you rest your arms up overhead and stay there. And then just continuing to breathe with that equal breath in and out. If you find that there's a little bit of pressure in the lower back, just lift up your bottom and reach the tailbone down. And if that's still not enough, you can place your feet flat on the floor, knees facing the sky, or you can drop the knees to anchor them in to connect in the center. And just working with that Samavriti, the breath in and out, equal in length. And just taking 1 or 2 final breaths here. And to come out of it, simply roll over to your side. Move everything out of the way. And come to lay again flat on your back. This time take your feet flat on the floor so that your hips and knees are bent, knees reaching up towards the ceiling. Allow your whole spine to integrate back into the connection to the floor. And giving yourself 3 really deep breaths. And then coming up to a seated position, so rolling over to your side, pressing yourself up, and taking your legs straight out in front of you. We're going to come into a variation of caterpillar pose, but rather than this being extension through the legs, which we'll come into later, we're going to roll through the back of the shoulders. So I quite like taking my bolster lengthways on my lap. Take your hands, hook them over the edge if you can reach. Drop the chin to the chest, and then really try and pull your arms away and out of the shoulder socket so you get this rounding through the upper back. So we've just had this huge extension through the spine this way, and now we're closing off the front of the chest and really stretching through the back of the shoulders. So you're going to feel this sense of reaching forward, and as you're reaching, you're also trying, it's almost like you're trying to push your back to the wall behind you. So there's a little bit more effort here to really stretch through the back of the shoulders, unless your shoulders are super tight and just curling over creates enough stretch. And you might find the breath naturally sinks down to the belly here. Super calming for the nervous system. You might also find that the breath naturally starts to soften and lengthen on the exhale. You're just going to continue to breathe equally and as easefully as possible. Just taking a final 1 or 2 breaths here. And then come to sit up tall. Bring your head, neck and shoulders stacked over the hips, spine long. Just open up the shoulders, roll them back. Just take the head and gently sweep it side to side just to stretch through the neck. And then roll the head 1 or 2 times in one direction and then the other direction. And then come to lay flat on your back, spine completely embedded to the earth, feet flat on the floor, knees to the sky. And just taking 5 breaths here, allowing that integration of the stretch through the front and back body to settle in. And then we're going to come into another extension of the spine, this time with the bolster. So taking the bolster lengthways, and we're going to lay over the bolster so the whole torso is open up and expanding at the front body, spine gently extended. If it feels a little bit too much for the head, my bolster is a little bit too short for me, so I always take a block under my head just for additional support. So you really want to make sure there's no gap, that the bolster is completely pressed up against your sacrum. If that's really icky and sticky in your lower back, you can also take another cushion or block underneath your bottom so that the whole spine is a little bit more neutralized. If you're doing that, I would then keep your feet flat on the floor and your knees bent. You can either stretch your legs out, have your arms out wide, palms facing up. So we're opening up again, similar to what we did in fish pose, but we're also just opening up through the lower rib cage and through the abdomen and down towards the lower aspect of the pelvic bowl. And if you wish to add in nice big juicy hip opener, you can bring the soles of the feet together and take the knees wide. Just creating this little banana shape through the front line of the body. And much like in the forward fold, where the breath tends to organically lengthen out on the exhale, you might find in these expansive poses with the heart open and the chest wide that the breath naturally starts to breathe in a little more. So just seeing if you can continue to keep the breath in union, breath in and out, equal breath. Just watch that you're not clenching through your jaw and the tongue's not pressed up against the roof of the mouth. Just letting go of the jaw, letting go of any clenched teeth, letting the tongue be soft in the mouth. And letting the eyes be softly closed as well. Just noticing if you're squeezing the eyes shut. If you're really open through the shoulders, you might be able to keep stretching your arms up overhead and interlock your fingers. Try and keep the palms facing up if you are going to do that. So the shoulders are still externally rotated and you get a nice big stretch through the under aspect of the underarm and the armpit, more through the back of the lats and the teres minor and major underneath the back end of the armpit. I'm just taking 5 more breaths here. If you have the soles of your feet together, just gently drawing the knees back together. If you have a block underneath your bottom, just gently moving that out of the way. And then rolling off to the side. And come to lay flat on your back. This time either keeping feet flat on the floor or you can extend your legs out flat so the whole body is laying flat on the earth. Just creating an integration of the spine back into a neutral position. Just 2 more breaths here on your back. And then making your way back up into a seat. And we're going to come into a caterpillar pose. So very similar to what we came into before, but rather than focusing on the contraction through belly and expansion through back of shoulders, we're going to really now just focus into this deep forward fold. I have been really enjoying taking this caterpillar pose with a bolster underneath my knees. So if you have lower back and hamstring tightness or issues, this can be really nice. I don't have either of those, but it's just been feeling really nurturing and very nourishing for my body. So I'm going to take a bolster underneath my knees. You can use blocks and cushions if you don't have a bolster. And then you can just gently fold over. And so you really here have this opportunity to close off this gap between the lower abdomen and the upper thighs, because you've taken some of the stress out of the hamstrings, but you're still going to get a lot of the benefit of the fascial stretch that happens through the whole back line of the body. So if you're not using a bolster, your legs will just be straight, your ankles gently flexed, and you'll just fold forward. You can, of course, have a bolster or blocks to rest your arms or head on. Just giving the whole back line of our body a nice big stretch and just opposing that beautiful heart opener we just did over the bolster, when now the whole front body is contracted and the whole back line of the body is really open and lengthened. And again, you might find here that the breath naturally starts to lengthen out and deepen out, and that's okay, because it's super calming for the nervous system and super calming for the mind. But if you are feeling a little flat or unmotivated or sluggish, then you might want to just continue to work with keeping the breath in and out in an equal rhythm. And just taking 3 more breaths here. And to come out of this fold, you want to bring your head, neck, and shoulders upright to stack over your hips. And just give yourself a couple of centering breaths in an upright position. And then just taking your props to the side and coming to lay flat on your back again. It may feel really nice to have your legs fully outstretched to allow the whole body to be completely flat on the floor, just to take out all of the bends and kinks of the hips. And then we're going to move into opening up just specifically across the very front of the pelvis and the hips. So using a block or bolster. I prefer a bolster just because it's soft and it's got a larger surface area. So taking your hips on the bolster, pressing your feet into the floor, lift your hips and pelvis up, slide your bolster or block underneath, and just really making sure that the whole surface of your bottom is supported and that the sacrum, the bony structure at the base of the spine, is completely supported by the bolster or block. Then you're going to stretch your legs out. If having both legs stretched out places any pressure on your lower back, you can just do one leg at a time. But really have this intention of stretching the leg as far as you can and having this upliftedness feeling through the front of the hip, so that you can feel that subtle stretch across the front of the hip. I'll only be here for about 3 minutes, so I'll instruct in about halfway through to swap legs if you're doing one leg at a time. It can be nice to take your arms outstretched, palms facing up, because we are in this open, expansive state again. Maybe you take the arms above the head. If you have just one leg stretched out and one leg bent, take the time now to swap the legs over. Taking a final breath here. And then just bending both of your knees, place the feet flat on the floor, keep the hips supported. Just rest your hands on the belly. And then squeezing your bottom, press into the floor, lift your hips up, move your support out of the way. And bring your hips back down to the floor. Just take your feet to the edge of your mat. So keeping your hips and knees bent, feet at the edges of your mat, and just sweep the knees side to side. So letting both knees fall to the left and both knees fall to the right. Just moving around slowly, sweeping side to side, just creating a little bit of movement, rotation through the pelvis and the hips. And you're going to keep the right foot flat on the floor and stretch the left leg up to the sky. You're going to really flex the ankle, pull the toes back towards the face and really stretch out through the back of the knee. You're just going to grab a hold of the back of the thigh, or if you can, if you have the range of motion, to stretch the hands up behind the back of the calf, or perhaps you can take a pistol grip, so index finger and middle finger of the left hand wrapped around the big toe. Really just depends on your flexibility in the back of the leg. And we're just going to be here for 10 breaths. So the intention here is to really hook out through the ankle, press the heel up as high as you can, really pull those toes down towards the face, and really stretching out through the back of the calf and the back of the knee. Should still be working with that equal breath in and out. As we're working our way down the body, balancing out the front and back lines of the body. And when you've completed those 10 breaths, just releasing that leg back to the floor, foot flat on the floor, knees, hips bent. And then taking it to the opposite side, so right leg stretching up, really stretching out through the back of the knee, ankle flexed, taking hold of the back of the hamstring, really pulling those toes down towards the face. Or if you can, take the hands up behind the calf. I wouldn't be taking the hands behind the knee, it'll cause the knee to bend. So trying to keep the leg really straight, hands behind the leg, or if you can take a pistol grip on that right big toe, really kick out through the heel, stretching out through the whole back line of the leg, but really paying attention to the back of the calf. And 10 breaths here. And when you finish those 10 breaths, allowing the right leg to come down, stretching both legs out flat on the floor. Just giving yourself 5 big breaths here. And then drawing both knees into the chest. Taking a deep breath in. Allowing both knees to fall to the left into a spinal twist for 5 breaths. You'll come back to center on an in-breath. And the exhale will allow the knees to fall to the right. In-breath will bring you back to center. Squeeze the knees into the chest. Extend out onto your back as you breathe out. If you need a bolster underneath your knees, go ahead and place one under there. Otherwise, just legs stretched out, arms stretched out, palms facing the sky, taking a deep breath in. And letting all the breath go. Just watching the breath coming and going, breathing in, breathing out. Just gently rolling over to your side and curl up into a ball for a moment. And then slowly rise up into a seat. Coming onto your bolster or block. And tapping back into that equal breath, Samavriti, breathing in the same length as you breathe out. And just carrying that rhythm of breath for another 10 rounds, your count, your timing. At the end of those 10 rounds of equal breath in and out, just give yourself a really big, full breath. Let all the breath go, maybe even through an open mouth sigh. Allow the breath to return to a natural rhythm where there is no control, no change. Just the body being breathed. And bring your hands to your heart, unifying there in the center. Hoping that you feel quite balanced through the asana, the poses, as well as the invitation to breathe consciously in an equal manner. Bowing head to heart, honoring the divine light within. Namaste.